The human mind is weakest when it is constantly watched. People do not just seek connection, they seek access. And once they have access, they shape your thoughts until you cannot tell where their voice ends and yours begins. Isolation is not punishment. It is the furnace where identity survives the burn, and the reason that we have been taught to fear being alone because modern culture sells companionship as proof of value. But the crowd is not always company. Sometimes it is camouflage for dependency. When you are always surrounded, you rarely hear your own mind without interference. Every conversation becomes a negotiation. Every opinion becomes a contamination. Every social reward trains you to become a better performer, not a stronger person. That is the first lie. The world says constant contact makes you healthy. In reality, it often makes you compliant. The loudest voices in your life are rarely the wisest. They are simply the most persistent. And persistence is how a pattern becomes a prison. If you never step away, you never notice how much of your identity is borrowed. You start reacting instead of choosing. You start polishing your personality for approval. You start living as a reflection of other people's expectations. Isolation strips away the audience, and with it, the addiction to performance. This is where the real battle begins. Without witnesses, your excuses lose their theater. Without validation, your habits reveal their true quality. You discover whether your discipline is real or just aesthetic, whether your confidence exists in your bones or only in a room full of nodding faces. Look at your own life and ask the uncomfortable question: when nobody is clapping, do you still move with purpose? When nobody is texting, inviting, praising, or needing you, do you still know who you are? Most people panic in silence because silence removes the narcotic. They have built their identity on feedback loops, and feedback loops are fragile. They need noise to survive. The isolated mind does not. It learns to generate its own authority. But isolation is not just absence. It is filtration. Every day you are exposed to arguments, trends, moods, and invisible hierarchies. People leak their fears into you. Their doubt becomes contagious. Their limitations begin to sound like reality. The longer you stay in that environment, the more your nervous system mistakes social pressure for truth. Then one day you leave the room and hear yourself think for the first time. Not the version of you built to survive attention. Not the version edited for approval. The real voice. The one that was buried under reaction, noise, and compromise. And this is where the predator pause matters. Because what you find in that silence is not emptiness. It is evidence. Evidence that your mind was never broken. It was merely occupied. That changes everything. Because if your mind can be occupied, it can also be reclaimed. True isolation does something brutal. It forces confrontation. You cannot hide behind banter, distractions, endless scrolling, or the emotional weather of other people. The unfinished parts of you rise to the surface. Your fear of failure, your hunger for validation, your addiction to comfort, your resentment, your grief, your self-deception. Alone, these things stop being background noise and become visible structures. Most people are terrified of this stage because they confuse discomfort with danger. But discomfort is often the only evidence that growth is real. The unbreakable mind is not created by constant pleasure. It is created by repeated encounters with the self, without escape. That is why isolation is not a retreat from life. It is a return to ownership. Think about your own life for a moment. If you removed every distraction, every social script, every external opinion, what would remain? Would there be a center strong enough to stand on its own, or only a nervous system trained to please? The answer is uncomfortable. That is why most people never ask it. In solitude, you begin to engineer your character instead of merely inheriting it. You train attention, you train patience, you train restraint. You learn that not every emotion deserves speech, not every impulse deserves action, and not every invitation deserves a response. This is how a mind becomes unbreakable, not by becoming cold, but by becoming governed. The strongest people are not those who have never been isolated. They are those who used isolation as a laboratory. They entered the dark and refused to negotiate with weakness. They learned how to sit with themselves until chaos lost its authority. And once that happens, the world changes. Manipulation becomes easier to spot. Pressure becomes easier to resist. Loneliness becomes less frightening than dependence. This is the final truth. Isolation does not create your mind, it reveals it, and whatever remains after the noise is what can truly endure. If you want to master this way of thinking, stop consuming comfort and start studying the mechanics of strength. To master these tactics in real life, get the Silent Observer's Playbook or check out the recommended reading in the description below. Like and subscribe for more.